Well, g'day everyone, and welcome back to another regatta review. I have Alan Crute, of course, who was on the banks of the Barwon at the weekend. Big weekend in racing on the Barwon, actually. Of course, it's sort of really the big kick-off to the season where we get to really see what's happening over the racing distances. We had all the schools on the Saturday, and we had some clubs and masters and us fools playing around down there on the Sunday. I think we had better weather. Anyway, g'day Alan, and welcome.
Well, hi Guy, and it was an exciting weekend. My daughter reminded me on the way down to Geelong that this is one of her favourite regattas because it's so much fun. And I had a ball. I thought the wind got up, but I had an absolutely marvellous time.
I reckon it's a ripper regatta, and obviously because I'm going back into my old days of that was where Head of the River used to be for us.
Of course.
And not that I remember it all, but if it was around the 7th of April in 1984, I happened to win a fourth crew Head of the River race. But I mean, I wouldn't remember that, but that, you know.
Not much.
Because rowing doesn't have much of an impact on your life that you're remembering 40 odd years later.
Well, I thought it was wonderful. And I heard from one party that there was the odd American recruiter there.
Oh,
American recruiters basically live in Australia now.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's interesting. Now, I'm gonna pull you straight to task here, Alan. I'm going to pull you straight to task, and you're probably not going to tell me again after I've told you this, after I mentioned this. But you seem pretty adamant the results on the weekend that the first eights would have Loretto Turak, and the second eights would have Loretto Turak. What went wrong? Not what
only
went wrong.
Only because in our last meeting you pushed me to name a winner.
Absolutely, and I'm not being critical because no one can get it right. Don't worry.
If you recall in our first conversation on tape,
yep.
I said we have a big three of MLC, Loretto, and MGGS.
Yep. And
I reckon and we thought that months ago. In fact, pre-season, and I reckon that's exactly where we are. So,
well, I think, sorry, to give you some feeling of relief on this, I think over those two races, correct me if I'm wrong, you're only out by about 0.8 of a second. Is that right? They were exceptionally close with MLC pipping them in both instances.
Well, it was there were two really interesting events. This was one of them. So in the first heat was a soft heat. Geelong College, who were wooden spooners last year, were surging in a big way. They beat Geelong Grammar and in a 5:07, and then MLC, who I think we both know in good shape, came out with a 4:59, beat Lauriston, who were very solid in the 5:09. And then we had the third heat was a big one. Under the bridge, Wesley and St Catherine's were close. Wesley won by 2 seconds in a 5:03. And then we had the heat of death, as the soccer people say.
Yeah.
We had Loretto Turak, MGGS and Furbank. Now, this is 1, 2 and 5 from last year.
Yep.
At Head of Schoolgirls. So under the bridge, Loretto Turak, or under the footbridge, I should say, Loretto Turak led by a length, and then there was a length and a half to Furbank, and that's what you would have expected.
Yep.
So LT's won by a couple of seconds in 4:53 from MGGS in 4:55 and Furbank in 5:02.
Yep.
So you're quite right to pick me up on the final. MLC at the footbridge took over, won by 0.81 of a second. Interestingly, Geelong College was third, beating Wesley by a second. But the really interesting thing is in the B final, remembering that MLC's rode a 4:49 and LT's basically rode a 4:49. In the B final, MGGS's rode a 4:51 and Furbank's rode a 4:52 in the C final.
Yeah, right. So it's the luck. This is why there's a great saying, the luck of the draw, and nothing speaks truer than rowing.
So to rank them, I think you can rank them now. Well, I'd ranked them beforehand, but you can rank them now. So MLC, LT and MGGS are in the top group.
Yep.
Wesley, St Cath's, Furbank and Geelong College, but they're a floater. I haven't seen them over 2Ks yet. They're in the next group. Then Geelong, Grammar, Lauriston and Genesana follow, and then Carey and Caulfield, and finally Shelford. Shelford will row second division and Head of Schoolgirls.
Yep.
And those, historically, sometimes you get a bit of a movement, and the ones that are most likely to move are Lauriston and Geelong College.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
So that's really interesting because what that means is the fourth position in the A finals up for grabs. And what it means is from the third group, Geelong, Grammar, Lauriston and Genazzano, one of them will make the B final. Who will that be, Guy?
Well, who knows? But the beauty of it too, once we get to the head of schoolgirls, you don't have this, I'm all done and dusted in my heat. You've got opportunities with repercharges, you've got semi-finals, you've got other ways to skin the cat, so to speak. So
my experience is the figures don't lie, though.
Figures never
sorts itself out.
No.
Now, in the seconds, we've been used the last 2 years. Loreto Turak didn't lose a race last year, and the previous year Geelong College, not Geelong College, I beg your pardon, Geelong Grammar, were invincible. This year's much closer. So again in the heats, MLC just beat MGGS by 3 seconds. LT won their heat. Furbank were good, beating St Catherine's in their heat, and Wesley won their heat in a slow heat. So in the final, MLC's beaten Loreto by a second.
Yep.
So, wow.
There's nothing in it.
No, there's nothing in it.
No.
Wesley, though, has beaten Furbank by a second to get third. So that thing is really close. You've got the same top three, and you've got the next group more or less the same with Furbank, St Cass, Wesley, and Geelong College.
Yeah.
It's funny in rowing, the groups don't change much. So I don't see that. Yeah, I don't see that changing a lot, and it doesn't usually, unless there's some eruption somewhere.
So if you're Wesley or Furbank at this point in time in the Division 2, you're basically saying don't bother training because your first 2 slots are already taken.
Well, they do present a medal. They do. You're being cheeky.
They
do present a medal.
Of course, that's
third.
not what you're saying.
And both those schools were not in the A final last year, so I reckon that. I can tell you I know one of those schools pretty well, and they're very excited to have their boat up there. I can tell you.
And look, as we know with sport, it's all about the resilience from here on in. They've all had their opening round, so to speak, and it'll be who's going to be backing up on the ergos this morning or whatever they're doing to show who's got the motivation to improve from here.
All those schools I mentioned should be pretty pleased. That was a spectacular event. I loved it.
Yeah, well, you were looking forward to that one, I know.
Oh yeah.
What about the quads?
Well, hang on. I'm just moving through. I'll just quickly go to the under 21 4.
Oh yeah.
MLC, not MLC. I've got MLC on the brain. MUBC were first, second, and third in a fleet of 5. Interestingly, Caulfield Grammar were only 4 seconds behind the third MUBC boat in the fleet. And I know one of the families and one of the girls in that Caulfield boat. They were delighted with that.
Yep.
And I thought Ballarat Clarendon was pretty good. Ballarat Clarendon was in a 2-boat race against the best MUBC boat, so they would have been pretty pleased.
Yep.
Just quickly, in the under-19 4, that was really, with no Loreto, Ballarat and Ballarat Grammar in this, it was Ballarat Clarendon seconds, thirds, and Ballarat High, which have really got a good crew, were third. Now, on your quads, this was the second highlight of the day.
Yep.
Because although I didn't mention it in my preview, this didn't have any split eights or anything like that in it. So basically we had Barwon, which I rank as, which is the old Cardinia, which is a cracker of the crew.
Yep.
Gippsland Grammar, which has got Tavaski and Garand in it, which is a brilliant crew.
Yep.
And MGC, which likewise is a great crew.
Yep.
Now, those 3 are very even. So, and we had Strathcona and Corowa at Lowther Hall and Fintona. So in the first heat, I'm watching that and I'm thinking Gippsland Grammar's in front, and then of course Corowa's not cropping off. And in fact, Corowa under the bridge was right with them in their brand new boat, and only lost by 2 seconds.
Yeah, I can
see. Which was a surprise because Corowa has been up and down the last few years, but occasionally they put in a really good one. Anyway, that was a good one.
Yeah.
MGC won the other heat from Barwon, which is kind of what you'd expect. Strathcona were much better than recently.
Yep.
So MGC's rode a 5:34, Strathcona's rode a 5:40. Good effort from Strathy, but they've been changing their crew around a lot. So in a magnificent final, and it was a magnificent final, under the footbridge, they were together.
Yeah.
I spoke to one of the Corowa parents later who thought they were level, but they were fourth. And so what's happened is MGC's won a magnificent race in 5:25. Corowa was 5:27, so 2 seconds. Gippsland were 5:28. And Barwon, which may not have been at full strength, I heard later, was 5:33.
Yeah.
So that, to say that fleet is even is an understatement.
They're going quick, these kids, Alan. If I might be wrong here, but if I just scratching my brain, because you don't do a lot of 1500 racing as well, back in my day we focused on it, of course, but I reckon 5 minutes was our target when, for a first or second crew, of schoolboys.
Oh, these girls are fast.
They're going quick. It's like, what are they doing? This
It's so exciting. I mean, you know what it's like to stand on that bridge and see 4 boats in line.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's much better standing on the bridge than being in the boat in that situation.
Well, you do the... Yeah.
It's not much fun being in the boat in that situation.
Yeah. So, look, this is really interesting because, of course, Ryden weren't there.
Yeah.
And Strathcona were close. So you've really got 6 crews here that could make the A final ahead of schoolgirls.
Wouldn't you think Ryden would want to be? I mean, this is the season opener. It's the quad. That's their thing.
Oh, they just had a change of the guard.
Yeah.
We'll see them next week because they're rowing Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
At the Ballarat Regatta.
But that'll be 2K though, won't it? That's 2K though, right?
Well, that is, but they haven't rowed that regatta in living memory. So,
okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Now,
well, that's interesting. So, I mean, why miss out racing 1500 on the course where you've got your head of schoolgirls? I don't understand the logic. I can understand, let's go do some 2K racing. Let's get them strong. Let's get them tough, whatever you want to do. But I don't understand missing that opportunity.
Well, neither do I, but I have a theory, but I'll tell you offline.
Yeah, we better not. Yeah, we don't want to be political here.
Let's move on.
Yep.
Under 19s, and the under 19s, it was good to have the under 9 races there because, of course, they've been banned from most of the regattas. This was a brilliant effort from Furbanks Interfirst, who won the second heat and won the final by about 18 seconds. But the real story of this race was the beleaguered Haileybury Fours crew, who often rode fours but rode quads in this instance, who in their first heat beat Gippsland Grammars into first and Strathcona's seconds. Now, this Haileybury crew's been floating around for a while, and sort of thereabouts and what have you, but they really broke through here. That second was a grand effort for them, and MGC was third in that final, having won their heat quite comfortably. That was a very good event too. So that gets you to lunch, Guy. Any comments at this stage?
No, well, there is one comment. It's sort of a shame to see Haileybury performing like that, considering they're giving it away.
Well,
and I mean that tongue in cheek.
It's a whole new podcast.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's great they're performing like that. I saw that they were there on Sunday too, actually. So they doubled up and had another go around on Sunday.
You've got those girls who are starting online.
Yeah.
Who are 2? I think there's 3 of them now, but I know there's 2. Those 2 girls, who I'm not going to mention because I shouldn't mention names too much, but everybody will know who they are. They're 2 they're 2 of the best single scullers in the state.
Yeah. Right.
Or scullers. I mean, they'll.
We spoke about this last week, I think, didn't we? We spoke about this last week.
Yes. I don't want to mention them too much.
No.
I said, though, as I left on Saturday, I was talking to them. I said, "You're 10 to 1 on. I just don't know what race you're going to race it." Anyway, shall we proceed to after lunch?
Let's go.
We're going well here.
Yep.
So, as you know, after lunch you get the under 21 8, and interestingly here in the heats, MUBC rode a 4:53, as did LT. LT beat Furbank by only 4 seconds. MUBC only beat MLC by 8 seconds, and St Cass got through in the what we call the softer heat, but in the 5:02. So anyway, in the final, which was an absolute ripper, and I was on the finish line for this one, MUC beat LT by only 0.64 of a second.
Oh wow!
That was really exciting. And I know those LT girls had really primed themselves for that one because They gave me a roar as they went by. But the really interesting thing was in the heat, that in the first heat, that Lauriston, which I've got in the third group, beat Geelong College by 8 seconds. And as I said earlier, Lauriston and Geelong College in the rankings of the two floaters are both improved, but where they finish at the end is probably, a bit unknown.
Sure.
Okay.
Just on something here, I've just noticed, I'm looking at the results as we're talking, and I've noticed MLC in their heat, of course, you get knocked out, but they came second to Melbourne Union in their heat in a time of 5:01.
Correct.
Right, so that's 10 seconds off the Loretto Toorak time in their final. Am I a bit harsh to say? Are they a bit soft out there on their own? They don't keep up the pace?
No, I think
brutal, but
one of the things I've learned about after lunch underage 8 events is you get all these wacky results.
Yeah.
And what you should do is the schoolgirl events always rank first, and underage events, particularly in 8s, rank second.
Yeah.
You just
more the training row, and if you get lucky, you take.
Well, you never know what those coaches are doing. They swap people around, but it's just experience. I know over the years you just get strange results. So there you are. You've got Lauriston beating GC, Geelong College.
Yep.
And as you pointed out, MLC's time is slower, but I think LT would have had a big. LT had a big fight beating off Furbank in that race. So you know what times are like. You sometimes look at times.
No, times. We spent. I mean, we didn't even look at times way back when, did we? It was just about winning the race.
Well, the only time I look at times really is on the Barwon, because usually the conditions don't change too much.
Yep.
Whereas if you're up at Ngambie and there's a crosswind, you just
there's nothing.
So female under 19s. Last year St Catherine's. It wasn't St Catherine's. It was Loretto Toorak, I beg your pardon, dominated this event. They didn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't LT. Sorry, I've had a brain failure.
I'm not going to accuse you of brain failure on the amount of info you pull out here.
No, that's all right. It's been a long day. I've actually had to do some work today, Guy. I've done a bit of rowing for preparation for next week.
Yep.
But the seconds competition last year was dominated by Loretto Toorak, and the previous year it was dominated by Geelong Grammar. Okay, so we've been used to a one-sided competition. So what's happened this time is that MLC, surprise, has come through with a 5:05 in the final.
Yeah.
Loretto Toorak's a 5:12, Furbank's a 5:13, and St Catherine's is a 5:18. Look, that thing will be big school. It'll be one of those ones that no one is going to surprise in that division.
Yep.
It'll be MLC, Loretto. Because I've got a personal interest in Furbank, I'd like to see them do well. Plus, I did tell those.
They are right on their heels. They're right on their heels, though. They're only a second off the pace there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, so getting into the home stretch here, going on to Quads Div 2. Now, this was another highlight. The first heat, you would have thought MGC, who absolutely smashed things apart last time, they were third out of 3.
Yep.
So Haileybury, that gutsy crew I was just talking about, won in a 5:40. Then we had a Gippsland crew, which was one of their inter crews, who are delightful, by the way. I got to meet them.
Yep.
And that school's got lots of English coaches now, you might like to know.
Right.
They've got 4. So anyway, that's beside the point. At MGC, we're in a 5:44. So that was, 4 seconds covered 3. Corowa easily handled heat 2, and Strathcona's seconds handled heat 3. Nicely over. Actually, they rejigged that one because they put Damascus in there. That doesn't matter too much. Anyway, in the final, Corowa and Haileybury both recorded a 5:40. So that was an absolute rip snorter of a race.
Yep.
And that Haileybury crew, you just have to come away thinking they've got a second in the under 19s and a second in Q2.
Yeah.
What an effort for a day.
Yeah.
Where psychologically those girls must be really being tested.
Yeah.
So I was very impressed by them. I thought, good on you girls. In Division Two fours, there were only two contestants competitors. I beg your pardon. Ballarat Clarendon, they're twos, and a mix from Carey. Clarendon won easily.
Yep.
In fours Division One, as I wrote, the interesting thing here. Well, I should say firstly, MGGS in their wisdom, but it was their wisdom, they avoided the under-21 event. So what they've done is they've put half their first 8 in F1 and half of their first 8 in Q1, which is unusual.
Right.
Usually you put half your first 8 if you're going to do a split in F1 and F2 or Q1 and Q2. They've just gone first.
Yeah,
anyway, here in the 4, what's happened is Heyman's crew from MGGS has got through the heat narrowly, but in the final they won by 4 seconds from Clarendon.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing, which I put in the preview, was that what I really wanted to see was Ballarat Clarendon versus Ballarat Grammar, and they actually were in the second heat, and Clarendon beat Grammar by 11 seconds. In the finals, Clarendon was 5 seconds faster, so Clarendon was in the A final, Grammar was in the B final.
Yep.
When you go back to the Melbourne Head results, Grammar had a fantastic regatta. So, and that was in quads. So, I'm sure Grammar are going to row fours, but I know there's been a long time between drinks from the Melbourne Head. But I would have thought Grammar would have been closer. But maybe I'm not really being unfair. It's just that result surprises. But Clarendon's been rowing, Grammar's been training. Not that Clarendon haven't been training, it's just been a different scenario.
Yeah, a different structure.
And almost finally, in Q1, now this is where Melbourne Girls Grammar put their Anthony stroked split 8. My goodness me. Here you had Barwon, Gippsland, and MGC.
Yep.
So poor old MGC happened to cop MGGS in the heat. So that was the end of them by 10 seconds.
Yep. That makes
Corowa's beaten Furbanks Inters by a little bit. Barwon's beaten St Catherine's intermediate crew, and Gippsland's got through against Strathie. So what's happened here is you've got a big, if you take Corowa now as being a major player, you've got in the final, you've got MGGS versus Barwon versus Gippsland versus Corowa.
Yep.
Well, MGS has gone out and beaten Barwon by 18 seconds.
Yeah, that's a margin, isn't it?
That is a margin.
Yeah.
So, but interesting also, Barwon and Gippsland, Barwon's rode so MGS, GGS has rode a 5:18. Barwon's rode a 5:36. So, major player in quads. Gippsland's rode a 5:38 and Corowa's rode a 5:39. So there's 3 seconds between those 3 major players.
Yeah.
If you remember what I said about the under-21 quad, being it was so damn close, that is really close.
Yeah.
So you don't want to dare ask me who's going to win quads, because it's impossible to tell you.
I'll let you off the hook this week.
Thank you, mate. And finally, this is the final event in double sculls. The Haileybury crew, as I call this, well, they both told me their middle names begin with the letter V. So we now call them not the C Max, the CV Max.
Right.
I don't know whether it's Veronica or whatever it is, but it's the CV Max.
Yep.
They won by 7 seconds over a very impressive Albert Park crew.
Yep.
Payne and Kiplowski, I'm mispronouncing that and I apologise. She was replaced by Gleason Payne because she's just come back to Australia, the former girl. They were only 7 seconds behind in a brilliant effort. And I really enjoyed that race. Good performances by some intercrews. And the double scull event has been a revelation since it was introduced 5 or 6 years ago.
A great introduction, I reckon. And it's also worth mentioning, I think, Alex, a lot of the parents who might listen go, 7 seconds, that's a massive margin. It's a big margin in an 8, but it's not in a double.
No.
It's a very small margin in a double.
I was terrible. Well, I can't remember whether I met the bow of that crew, but I met the young Les, who was the fill-in stroke. I'm trying to be good and not mention too many names.
Yeah.
I met her at the previous regatta and she'd been injured. She was originally a Cox, like you.
Right.
And so she's come out there in this race and absolutely gone bang.
Yeah.
And if the Haileybury crew wasn't there, because I don't think they are going to be in Division 1 ahead of schoolgirls. Oh, well, not in seniors.
Yep.
They would have won. So that was fabulous. But all in all, it was a marvellous day.
Yep.
I ended up losing 3 arm wrestles to a year 8. I was talking to the president of one of the major schools, and Dad and year 8 were there, and I lost 3 arm wrestles to the year 8 daughter, but that's all right.
Nothing embarrassing about that.
Hey?
Nothing embarrassing about that.
No. And I got invited to the University of Melbourne Regatta
Oh.
by a lass who rode for St Catherine's up till about 3-4 years ago, whose name I remembered very well.
Mm.
And so I just have a wonderful day.
Excellent. Now, what's up next? We got Ballarat next, haven't we?
This is interesting because entry numbers are down a lot.
Yeah.
And I started to analyse why. You might remember what happened last year is they got rid of the under-19 events at Werribee, I've got work in the brain. The Wendouree, Ballarat Regatta, the Nagambie and Vix.
Yep.
And that's because those regattas, particularly Nagambie and Vix, were bulging and untenable. And also, after entries, they got rid of intermediate entries. The problem with this regatta is that some schools, like Geelong Grammar, for example, and particularly this year, as we discussed the other day, because Easter is early, and the APS schools don't get to compete at nationals. Okay?
Yep.
So what's happening is that some schools aren't competing at this regatta because they're preparing for the New South Wales Championships the following week.
Right.
The New South Wales Championships clash with the Furbank Regatta, which is when I say just, it's a fabulous regatta. It's a junior intermediate regatta.
Yep.
So what's happening is that when I last looked, the entries were about 248 next week versus about 300 the previous week. Now, I started to look, but I haven't completed it. I think what they should do is they should reinsert the under-19 events at this regatta only.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is you're not going to get a big girl influx because the Morongo regatta's on the same day.
Same day, yes.
Yeah. So I reckon if they're after 300 entries, not 240, and they should do that. Now, I did do all this analysis last year, and the under-19s account for 10 to 15% of the entries.
Right.
So you add 248, add on 10, 15%, you get 280-ish.
Yep.
So I think they should do that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Just sidetracking very briefly, I'm just looking at the entries for Ballarat, and a noticeable absentee MLC aren't there.
Well, I told you they won't go because the guy who's running that program now never rode at Ballarat.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Anyway, that's each to their own, I suppose. Everyone has their reasoning for things.
Well, I think his view, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he rode that event, and I did go back about 3 years ago. I went back to about 2012.
Yep.
And when he was at Brighton, I think that was when they last rode in Ballarat, and I don't think that was states, but that's when that gentleman was in charge of Brighton. They even would skip states if it was in Ballarat. They didn't worry about states.
Right.
Because their major interest was nationals and head of schoolgirls, which is fair enough because their record is unsurpassable. Yeah. So what's happening, it was actually interesting when I noticed MLC wasn't there. That was not a surprise.
Yeah. Expecting it.
And the MLC parents are excited because it's all moving. I mean, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
Anything else you're noticing there from next week?
No, just scanning through. All looks sort of. I'm not. Why am I not seeing Brighton again? Am I missing that?
Oh no, they're there. I'll tell you one thing which I've noticed is have you noticed the number of elite crews that are rowing clubs as the second event?
Yeah.
One thing you will notice next week, that Flash Barwon crew is rowing under 21s, but they're not rowing schoolgirl ones, they're rowing clubs. Now,
right.
So this is a trend that I've noticed this year. So if you look at the club single scull event next weekend,
yeah,
and check out the school single scull event, the talented single scullers, the school single scullers, are split between the two events.
Yeah. Now I wonder why would they do that?
Well, it might be timing because the single scull event's now in the afternoon. But I've noticed actually that I saw it the other day and I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
And I noticed it all through your regatta this weekend. If you have a look at some of the entries in those sort of grade events and what have you, those were elite girls that row at nationals, which you don't usually see row Sundays too often.
No.
And so what's also happening, if you notice, is that most of the eights crews are not rowing under 21s.
Yeah,
have you noticed that?
Yeah.
There's a really flash composite view, a composite crew, which includes some of our best rowers. If you get down to that, that's under 21 fours, which is in the morning.
Yep.
Okay. If you look at that one, you got Richardson, Kafuri. So that's a dream boat.
Yep.
Okay, but if you have a look in the afternoon, there's almost no one in under 21 eights. So the big schools are basically leaving at lunchtime. Well, why? Because if they've got 2 or 3 eights, there's no under 19 eight for them to row in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So they're stuck.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So if you look at what Furbank's doing, Furbank is basically rowing in the morning and splitting them in the afternoon, and they're in fours or whatever. But if you look at most of the other schools, what they're doing is they're basically leaving at lunchtime, which is very sad for the regatta because that's probably one of the reasons the entries are down.
Yeah.
And that's simply, look, under 19 events. I mean, you're a mad skier. I was until I'm too old, but
never too old, Alan.
On a ski resort, there's link lifts.
Yep, there is.
Okay. Under 19 events, a rowing's version of link lifts.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You need under 19 events, basically for these crews to do to keep them at the regatta.
Yep, good point.
You need under 19 events in the morning.
Yep.
For the 4-seaters, and you need that under 19 event, because if you've got three eights, and you're not going to put your second and third eight in under 21s because probably you can't anyway, but you're not going to because they're going to get smashed. You need the under 19 event. There's no under 19 event.
Now, I don't know if this comes into this at all, Alan, but I recall some years ago I was on the committee of the Scotch Mercs Regatta. It was Billy Webster had the enviable task of putting together the schedules. And of course, I knew nothing of all of this, but there's all of these rules that Rowing Vic have, I assume RV, RA, whoever, in relation to how long school kids can be out during the day doing what they do. Now, I'm not really giving away much, so I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but it could be something to do with the scheduling could be affected by those so many hours that they're allowed, and then they're meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, I know because the former CEO and I discussed this several times. The major problem was the schools were thinking regattas were too long.
Yeah.
And often they were. Yeah. You saw how long your regatta was.
Oh, God, yesterday. That was like a marathon thing.
That's right. Yeah. So there were 2 steps taken last year. One, the under 19 events went from those 3 major regattas, which I discussed earlier.
Yep.
Okay. And the reason for that was that they wanted to guarantee that schoolgirls and boys, but particularly in this case, schoolgirls would get 2 events. In other words, the B, C, and potentially D finals wouldn't have to be abandoned in the schoolgirl event. And I understand that entirely. Okay. So, in other words, there was time to have the minor finals in the major events.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing they did at least one, perhaps two regattas, is that once the entries came in, they deleted the intermediate entries. And particularly at Victorian Championships, the intermediate entries account for quite a number because, you see, some years ago, the Victorian Senior Championships were on the same weekend as the Victorian Junior Championships. It's changed over the years. It's off on, off on.
Yep.
So at the moment, if you're a crack intermediate crew, and you've seen this with MGGS and many other schools, you can compete at juniors, but you can also compete at seniors.
Yeah.
So you get these bloated fleets, which have big inter presence.
Yeah.
So, as I said to you earlier in this podcast, what I would do is on the Wendouree Ballarat, because you've got other factors involved, I would re-include the under-19 events because I think you can, and I'd keep the under-19 events out at Ngambie and Vix, because I don't think Vix needs. I mean, Vix is going to get intermediate entries anyway. That's just my view.
Well,
and just on one final thought, perhaps I did present to the Shelford parents that idea we had. Remember the Shelford Shield?
Yeah.
I think they really appreciated that, although all Shelford parents look pretty stunned at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're having a fun time. So
it makes it hard, but the idea is an absolute ripper. For those who are listening for the first time, just briefly tell us what your idea was.
Well, before I do, I invited them to listen to the idea on your podcast, our podcast.
Yeah.
So the idea is that in Division 1 at Head of Schoolgirls, that is the 4 junior divisions, the 4 intermediate divisions and the 5 senior divisions, that points are awarded 4, 3, 2, 1 for the A finals. And we have this fascinating competition that goes through those events, and the winner is appointed the Shelford Shield.
Yeah.
And without going over too much ground, I think we both agree it was a fascinating competition when we looked at last year's results.
Yep, absolutely. And you've backdated the idea and worked out the numbers. I think it sounds like an absolutely ripping idea.
Well, if RV and Shelford can't do it, it's not that I'll be stunned, because I'm often stunned in life, but they should do it. I mean, it'll cost them $100 shield, and it's very important to preserve the names of the schools.
I agree. As the fine name of Morongo is still floating around.
That's right. Well, the way rowing is going at the moment, they might be joined by 1 or 2 others at some stage.
Oh, jeepers.
It's tough out there, mate.
Oh dear. Anyway, all right, we should wind it up. We've been yapping for a while. We will speak again after Ballarat.
Then we can have a week off, because I don't think we need to discuss New South Wales.
Yeah, then there's a bit of a gap, isn't there, until
that's all right. That's good.
After that.
Refresh.
Anyway,
all right, lovely to see you, and
you too.
Keep your podcast going, and
thank you very much.
I'll try and get some good writing done during the week.
Brilliant. Well, look forward to it. Look forward to chatting about Ballarat. And if you head up there, hopefully it's a nice day for it. I think the weather's meant to be good for the rest of the week. I don't know about Saturday's weather though, but we'll see. Oh, that's all right for Ballarat. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Under the trees.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Good on you. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for joining us, and we will chat again next week.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.